So we're looking at the warm-up. We talked a few weeks ago about whether or not lines are parallel. I'll just give you a refresher before I send you on your own with this. Two lines are considered parallel if they have the same slope, okay? Because that means they're growing and changing at the same rate. So in the first two problems, you're going to want to compare the slopes between the two equations and see whether or not you feel those lines are parallel. And the last one, we don't have the rest of the problem for whatever reason. So we're actually not going to worry about doing problem number 3. So go ahead and try 1 and 2 on your own. Turn the video off and then restart it whenever you're ready. So looking at problem 1, the first thing I have to do is get both of those equations into slope-intercept form. So the first equation, I'm going to move the -2 to the other side by adding +2. So that will give me y equaling 2x plus 2. The second equation, I need to move the positive 2x over, making it -2. So y equals -2x plus 7. First equation has a slope of 2. Second equation actually has a slope of -2. Those two slopes do not match, so these lines are not parallel. They're close, but there is a difference between a -2 slope and a +2 slope. Looking at the second problem, first equation, y equals 1x plus 4. Scratch that, y equals -1x plus -4. Forgot the negative signs. And the second equation, I need to move everything around and I need to divide everything by 3. I get y equaling -1x plus 5/3. I'm not worried about the 5/3. Don't let the 5/3 freak you out because all you're interested in is your slope. And in both cases, the slope for this problem is -1. So therefore, these would be parallel. So today we're going to be looking at parallel and perpendicular lines again. Parallel we've already talked about. They have the same slope. Today we're going to focus on how we write them. Then we'll talk about what it happens if you have perpendicular lines and how do we write equations of perpendicular. So with parallel, the two big things you need to get, if we have two lines, same slope, they are parallel. If we have two lines with the same slope, they are considered parallel. And the converse also works. Again, we have two lines. This time, if we are told they are parallel, we can go ahead and assume that they have the same slope. Parallel line, same slope. So I want to write the equation of the parallel line. We want that line to go through the point -3, -5, and we want it to be parallel to the line down below. All I need from this bottom line, this y equals 3x minus 1, is I need to pull the slope from it. And the only reason I need to pull the slope from it is because it said we wanted them to be parallel, and parallel lines have to have that same slope. So now that I have the slope, I'm going to get rid of that equation completely, because I don't need it for anything else and I don't want it to confuse you. So now I have a slope and I have an ordered pair, so I need to find my y-intercept or my b value. So -5 equals 3 times -3 plus b. So -5 equals -9 plus b. That is a -9. We're going to add 9 to each side. I'm going to get b equaling 4. So final answer would be the written equation of y equals 3x plus 4. And because my new line has a slope of 3x, and my original line had a slope of 3x, we know that those two lines would in fact be parallel. Go ahead, try this one on your own, pause the video. Whenever you're ready, turn it back on and we'll go over the answer. So now that you've had a chance to try it, and I've been in the mood to switch colors, so I'm going to write in green this time. So I need to pull the slope only out of the equation that I was given. So that's a slope of -1. Now using my x and my y from the ordered pair, I'm going to find that y-intercept or b value. and y does not equal negative 1, m equals negative 1. So 11 equals negative 1 times negative 2 plus b. So 11 equals positive 3 plus b. We're going to subtract 3 from each side. And we end up with 8 equaling b. So my newly formed line is y equals negative 1x with a starting point or a y-intercept at 8. So now we're going to look at perpendicular. Perpendicular slopes are negative reciprocals of one another. So we're going to take the slope, we're going to flip it upside down, and we're going to change the sign, and that's how we end up with perpendicular lines. And remember that perpendicular lines are two lines that cross and form 4 right angles. So if we know that the slopes are negative reciprocals, we can assume that they are perpendicular. If we are told that my lines are perpendicular, then we can assume that they have negative reciprocal slopes. So right now, all we want to do is determine if lines are parallel or perpendicular. And the only way to determine if lines are parallel or perpendicular is to find the slope. And to find the slope, we need it in slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. So the first equation is already in slope-intercept form, so we know it has a slope of 5. My second equation, I'm going to move the x over, which would make it a negative 1x. Divide everything by 5. And that's what my second equation would look like in slope-intercept form. It has a slope of negative 1/5. And my last equation, I'm going to bring the x over, which is negative 2. So I'm going to bring the negative 2 over, making it positive, and then divide everything by negative 10. So that will give me negative 1/5 x, and our y-intercept will stay 0. Parallel lines are pretty easy to pick out. They have the same slope. So 2 and 3 are considered to be our parallel lines because they both have that negative 1/5 as the slope. Perpendicular, there are actually, should be a P. There's actually 2 pairs of perpendicular. 1 and 2 are perpendicular, and 1 and 3 are perpendicular. The negative reciprocal of 5, well, the reciprocal is 1 over 5. And since the 5 was positive, the negative or opposite of it would be negative 1/5. So go ahead and try this one on your own. Pause the video if you need to. Again, please make sure you start by making sure all of your equations are written in slope-intercept form. So now that you've had a chance, let's work them out together and write them in slope-intercept form. So y equals 1/3 x plus negative 1/2. Here I have y equaling 3x plus negative 8. And for the last one, so I'm going to have negative 4.5. I'm going to divide that by negative 1.5. And I get 3. So y equals 3x plus 6 divided by negative 1.5 would give me negative 4. That 2x is not negative, that 2x is positive, which would make that negative 1/3. Okay. So in the first equation, my slope is negative 1/3. In the second equation, my slope is 3. And the last equation, my slope is also 3. So my parallel lines in this case are 2 and 3. My perpendicular lines are 1 and 2 and 1 and 3. And it's not always going to work out to be those same pairs matching up. Sometimes you might end up with none that are parallel or none that are perpendicular. So now we're going to write an equation of a perpendicular line. Remember that perpendicular lines have a negative reciprocal slope. So the given equation has a slope of 2. For me to write a perpendicular line, I need the negative reciprocal of 2. The negative reciprocal of 2 is negative 1/2. So I'm going to be using negative 1/2 as my slope value. Now that I have the negative 1/2, I don't need that equation for anything else. Plugging in my x and my y, I need to find b. So negative 5 equals negative 1/2 times 4 plus b. So negative 5 equals negative 1/2 times 4 will give me negative 2 plus b. I'm going to add 2 to each side. We end up with b equaling negative 3. Final equation, y equals negative 1/2 x plus negative 3. One more for you to try on your own, last one for this lesson, and then again, like always, we'll go over it together. So again, I'm looking for perpendicular, so I need a negative reciprocal slope. In this case, the given slope was 4, so I'm going to be using negative 1/4 as my slope value. I don't need that equation anymore. I'm going to plug my x and my y in. So negative 2 equals negative 1/4 times 4 plus b. So negative 2 equals negative 1 plus b. I'm going to add 1 to each side. And I get negative 1 equaling b. So y equals negative 1/4 x plus negative 1 for my final perpendicular line. Your homework is actually going to be a worksheet. And as always, you should have that worksheet in front of you, but if you don't, you can find it on my website, whether it's on the team calendar or whether you go through all my links and find it that way. If you have any questions, as always, please come see me.